Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and this is the healthiest show anywhere online today. Appreciate you joining us right here on Facebook and on YouTube. Coming up, are sugar and flour cancer-causing foods? Well, we're going to get to the bottom of that and a lot more when we're joined by Dietitian Lee Crosby as our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign rolls on. On today's show, we are going to be opening up the Dietitian's Mailbag, answering your questions and clearing up confusion about breast cancer and nutrition. So there is a lot of good information coming your way. Stick around for that. But first, as always, let's get you caught up on the latest happenings. Here are your health headlines for Thursday, October the 15th. 2020. Coronavirus cases continue to surge across the country and around the world. In the U.S., nearly 60,000 infections reported Wednesday, the most on any single day in nearly 2 months. Some states also recording a record number of patients. Meanwhile, nationwide, the number of cases is up 16% since last week. And over in Europe, health officials are scrambling to contain a second wave of the virus. The World Health Organization reporting today that 80% of countries there are experiencing a surge. Paris now instituting a nightly curfew in an effort to flatten the curve once again. In other news, China will reportedly be banning the farming of dozens of exotic animal species by the end of the year. That's good news. Among those on the list are many that are sold in so-called wet markets, such as the one in the province of Wuhan, where the coronavirus outbreak is believed to have began. China previously outlawed the consumption of wild animals in response to the pandemic. The Chinese language publication The Paper first reported the ban. And back in the States, interest in meatless alternatives continues to boom. Sales of plant-based meats have nearly doubled every single month during the pandemic, and some estimates show the spike is as much as fourfold. Sales of conventional meat, though, also on the rise, but at a far slower pace. Data compiled from the industry website Food Drive shows that shoppers in March purchased 40% more beef, chicken, and pork compared to March of 2019. But compare that to plant-based meats, that spike there, an astounding 241%. That, my friends, is growth. All right. Today's show is all about getting you answers to your breast cancer questions. And for that, I will be joined by Dietitian Lee Crosby, aka the Fiber Queen. Now, this conversation is actually from today's episode of the Exam Room podcast. So if you haven't downloaded that yet, consider this your exclusive. It's actually a double episode because Dr. Christy Funk is also on the podcast there today. But today, here on this show, the Exam Room Live, Lee will be answering the questions that you sent in. We're going to be answering questions about the effect of food on breast cancer. Foods like sugar and white flour and alcohol. Someone wrote in, wanted to know about soy. And while, yes, there are studies showing that soy can help prevent breast cancer now, but is that the same if it's an estrogen-related breast cancer? Well, Lee has the science on that. Plus, we're going to get into the organic versus conventional debate when it comes to produce and cancer risk. So we have a lot to get into. So let's go ahead and start doing that right now as we open up the Dietitian's Mailbag. We're going to be separating fact from fiction with the one and the only Lee Crosby. Dietitian's Mailbag now. Here is a great question. The first one comes to us from Sarah. Now, I'm assuming Sarah may have a sweet tooth. She wants to know, when it comes to breast cancer, do I need to avoid eating sugar?
It depends on how you're eating that sugar. So if your sweet tooth is, hey, I'm going to have some fruit for dessert, well, go right ahead. Fruit is actually linked to a lower risk of getting breast cancer. I'm guessing that's not what she's having her major cravings for. I'm guessing it's more of a pastries and cake and candy kind of thing, in which case I am so sorry to be the bearer of bad tidings, but that is actually linked to increased risk of breast cancer, particularly foods that are high glycemic index, right? So very in general, that means foods that are refined, right? So white flour, white sugar, sodas, those kinds of things. We really do want to be minimizing or avoiding those when we can.
Yeah. So white flour, that was a question that somebody else has here in the
Yeah.
mailbag. That's not a good one either, huh?
No, it's not. It's suboptimal. It's better if it's in something like a pasta because interestingly, even though pasta's got white flour, it's so dense, it dissolves so slowly that it actually raises blood sugar very slowly. And then you get a slow fall back down. So you're not spiking blood sugar, you're not spiking your insulin. And those are things that can be an issue in terms of cancer risk. But what you're getting when you have white flour in the context of pasta is it's acting like a whole grain. So even better is to have not even just whole grains that are powdered into flour, although that's better than white flour, but to have an intact whole grain. Like you should be able to see that it looks like a seed or a little, a little grain that would be on a little stalk. The closer it looks to the way it grew, the better off you are.
Solid advice. Here's a question from Rebecca. Wants to know, should I go organic exclusively?
Um, there's no data to suggest that that would be, well, there's no data proving that that would be helpful. And in general, I want people to eat the healthy foods, whether or not they are organic. So I don't want someone to sweat like, oh gosh, is this soy organic or isn't it organic? Oh heck, I'm just going to go have a burger. Like eat conventional. If it's eat the healthy foods, eat conventional if you need to. If you have the time, the accessibility, the income, the money to do that, because the organics are more expensive, then sure, go ahead and get them. It might be helpful. I actually just recently did a little literature review for this and not a review, but just sort of looked through it myself. And the only thing I found was I found one study and it said that, let me make sure I'm getting this right, that women who ate half or more of their produce organic had a slightly lower risk relative to women who never ate organic produce, but not relative to those who just ate low amounts of organic produce. So probably, I mean, and it's just one study. So that does not you can't draw a firm conclusion from that. So what
Mhm.
that says to me is if you can afford to buy organic produce, great, awesome, buy it. It might help. It's certainly not going to hurt to buy organic. It might hurt your wallet, but it's not going to hurt you health wise. But if you can't, please eat the produce, eat the fruits and veggies, eat the whole grain, the beans, even the soy. And we can talk about soy. I'm going to guess there's a question somewhere in that bag on soy because there always is. But eat the produce. Conventional is fine. If you can afford it, go ahead and get as much of it organic as you can. If you need to be mindful with your food dollar, the Environmental Working Group every year puts out a dirty dozen list of the most pesticide heavy or herbicide heavy fruits and vegetables. So you can avoid the ones that are at the top of that dirty dozen list. You can buy those, avoid them conventionally. So buy the dirty dozen organic because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And then the rest of them, you just don't worry about it.
All
So
right.
that's actually tends to be my general strategy.
All right. You want soy? We got soy. This one comes to us from Lisa. Wants to know, should we be avoiding soy food, especially if we have an estrogen related cancer?
I love this question because it speaks to so many different women and who've gotten this advice oftentimes from a healthcare provider. No, you actually want to, I always do it the rhyme, enjoy soy. But I say it that way because multiple studies have actually found that soy is good for breast health. Right now, soy does contain these substances called isoflavones, right? They are known as phytoestrogens. And since we know that high levels of estrogen are linked to increased risk of breast cancer, there have been concerns that these soy isoflavones could promote breast cancer. However, from the data we have in actual humans, people who consume whole soy foods are actually appear to be have some degree of protection against breast cancer. Now, do we have a minute for me to get into some of the what's going on behind the scenes that makes that work?
Take it. Take
All
the
right,
minute.
let's do this. All right. So first, what is
Yeah.
estrogen? We kind of throw it around, right? It's like the lady hormone. So estrogens are female hormones, right? They're made by women. They're also made to a lesser extent by men, but a much lower level of synthesis. There are different types that predominate based on your age. So you get estrone is sort of the postmenopausal estrogen form. It's made predominantly by fat tissue. Estradiol is the premenopausal version that tends to be made by the ovaries or is made by the ovaries. And here's the kicker is that not only do we have different kinds of estrogen in our bodies, we have different kinds of estrogen receptors, right? And so what's a receptor? I don't know. Chuck, do you want to answer what a receptor is?
No, you're the dietitian. You're the one that has the
It's like,
credentials.
nope.
No,
All
no, this
right.
is all you.
Honest, fair. All right. So two kinds of receptors. They're like little docks, right? That's where the little estrogen will plug in on the cell and then things will happen. So there are two kinds of receptors. So there's an alpha receptor, which I like to think of as the accelerator, right? Alpha, the accelerator receptor, say that 3 times fast. And that can promote the growth of breast cancer cells, right? Like the accelerator in a car, when estrogen binds to it, it's like putting your foot on the gas. Then there's the beta or brakes receptor, right? And that actually is a slow down receptor for estrogen. It helps block cell growth that's part of the cancer process. And so, interestingly, whereas your body's own estrogen, especially estrone, the postmenopausal kind, but also estradiol, estrone in particular binds to that alpha accelerator, right? Pushes down on the gas. We don't want that. Which kind of receptor do you think that these soy isoflavones or phytoestrogens hit? You think they hit accelerator or brakes? Alpha or beta?
I mean, are we seriously asking me a question? Again, I feel the need to remind you
Chuck.
that I don't have any,
Oh,
credentials behind my
gracious.
name.
All
There
right.
is no MD there, come on.
Oh, come on. Anyway, so these phytoestrogens, they hit those beta or brakes receptors. So they, again, while they look a little bit like estrogen, they actually bind to the kind of receptor that tells your cells, hey, whoa, back, slow down. Let's not grow so much. Versus, again, your body's own estrogen, which hits the alpha receptor preferentially. So that's why these soy foods, one of the reasons why they think that soy foods with these phytoestrogens or isoflavones can actually help reduce cancer risk. So, and again, in terms of the numbers, I'll just give you a few numbers here, right? So we have a 2013 paper. It's one of my favorites because I like it because it's a meta analysis. So meta, which is just fancy speak for big study, study of studies, right? I mean, meta. So they looked at data from the researchers looked at data from 22 studies, and they found that, and this is among Asian women who are actually eating enough soy to be able to tell where there's a difference, whereas in America, we don't eat very much soy at all. But among Asian women, those who consumed the most isoflavones had a 32% lower risk of breast cancer. And that was observed for both pre and post-menopausal breast cancers. And sidebar, a 2014 meta-analysis reached similar conclusions. So there's pretty solid data there. Not just good for people who are, don't have breast cancer yet. We also found a study that women who are diagnosed, or the Women's Healthy Eating and Living study showed that for women who had already been diagnosed, breast cancer survivors found that those who ate the most soy cut their risk of cancer coming back, or the risk of dying from breast cancer in half. So that's a pretty good reason to go ahead and, just put some tofu in your stir fry, best I can tell. So but again, it gives you some reasons as to why those phytoestrogens are actually not acting like the estrogens that your own body makes and may be protective, whereas your own body's estrogens are a little more hazardous.
Get on board the tofu train.
That's
See,
right.
now I know the answer to these questions. And so when you put that on the test at the end of the
That's
show,
right. There will be a
I will
test.
be able to answer them, right?
Mm-hmm.
These
All
pop
right, I'm going to hold
quizzes,
you to that,
they're
listeners.
they're
Are you
detrimental.
ready? This
No,
is going
we
to be
won't.
fun. It's going to be fun. Pop quiz, Chuck.
All right, here we go. Next question. This is a good one. I'm not even sure that I've seen any studies on this. You would know better than I. Does gluten play a role in causing breast cancer?
I have not seen any research suggesting that would be the case. Um, any research that probably would tie in gluten would be attached to, again, refined carbohydrates. So those highly processed, high glycemic index foods, like the white bread and the donuts and all these things that white flour would be in, which is where most of Americans are getting their gluten.
Mhm.
Most of America is getting its gluten. Again, most Americans aren't eating a lot of bulgur wheat or wheat berries. That's not what they're putting a Pop-Tart in the toaster. So it's a very different. If there were to be a study that found that link, I would want to see them separated out from whole grain versus refined flours. But no, I'm with you. That's a long way of saying I do not know of any data suggesting that there is a link between gluten and breast cancer.
Tiffany wants to know, should I be going down the vitamin aisle? What is the connection between cancer risk and supplements? Is there one?
Not that we have good data on. We really just don't have any. There's no recommendation on certain supplements for reducing breast cancer risk. The best supplement I know of is to really just eat a whole food, plant-based diet. Of course you do. Eating plant-based, you want to make sure you supplement with vitamin B12 if you're not getting some sensible sun exposure, and particularly in the winter months when it's really, you can't get sun exposure unless you're a little more adventurous, I think, more cold tolerant than the rest of us. A vitamin D supplement might be a good thing to do. But again, that'd be something to check with your doctor on. But other than that, again, the best thing you can do in terms of reducing breast cancer risk is choosing those plant-based foods and then just plugging for those other steps, getting active, maintaining a healthy weight, and cutting the alcohol.
You know what's great during those cold winter months is a nice hot cup of green tea. So here we have a question from somebody who wants to know, is it true that green tea can help fight cancer?
It Yes and no. Yes, I don't know of data that actually say that, okay, if you give people green tea, they will get less cancer, but there are links between some of the catechins or some of the little cancer fighters in green tea and decreased risk for breast cancer specifically. And I can't remember if those are lab or population studies, but I don't believe we have any like drink green tea, here's a lower cancer risk clinical trial, but we do have data suggesting that's the case. So you know what, if you need a little boost on a cold winter day and you are looking to reduce your breast cancer risk, I think green tea is a great way to do that.
And it's just plumb delicious. Have you had it with toasted rice?
I have. It is surprisingly good.
Let
Yes,
me tell you something. That is your pro tip of the day. If you
it
have
really
not
is.
tried green tea with toasted rice, I mean, just hit pause on this recording right now and go make that happen. Come back
Yeah,
and you're going to say, man, they were right.
it's
This is
more of a
good.
savory thing, but it's really good.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, you're not going to want to put sugar and lemon in it. Trust me. You're going to want to drink it as is.
All right. Here's a great question. Why is it that so many doctors recommend a low fat diet to reduce breast cancer risk? What is the connection there?
Okay. Well, the connection there is there are a couple of different reasons that that might be the case. Some of it is when you're decreasing fat intake, you're decreasing saturated fat, which can help reduce estrogen levels. You're increasing fiber, which we know is linked to a lower risk of breast cancer. I believe that for every additional 10 grams of fiber a woman consumes per day, her risk of breast cancer drops by about 7%. And again, fiber is going to come in mostly those low fat foods. There aren't too many high fat plant foods. There are some nuts, seeds, and avocado. But it's also going to get rid of a lower fat diet. It's going to get rid of a lot of the junky stuff. It's going to get rid of a lot of meat. You're not going to be doing fried chicken, a lot of your red meat and processed meat and cheese. All that stuff is off the table, which is great for breast health. And also, we have some data. There's actual clinical trial data suggesting that, not even suggesting, this is actually showing that the only diet style we have that's been proven to help lower a woman's risk of dying from breast cancer, again, in an intervention trial, is a low fat diet. So I will give you the details on this one. This was a Women's Health Initiative study. They basically followed a big study, more than 48,000 postmenopausal women for nearly 20 years. And that's the kicker, right? Because cancer takes a while to develop. So a lot of these studies will have a 5 or a 10-year follow-up period. You can't really see much because cancer takes longer than that to get going, oftentimes. So they followed these women for nearly 20 years, and they found that women eating a low-fat diet rich in vegetables, fruits, and grains had a 21% lower risk of dying from breast cancer. So I think that right there is one of the most compelling reasons to, you know what, keep the fat content down. Don't replace it with like the snack. Does anyone remember Snackwell's cookies?
Oh
Remember those
yeah.
things?
Oh
Oh
yeah.
my
When I
gosh.
was still overweight, I used to love those things and think that that was the healthiest snack
Right?
going.
Because they're low fat. But we don't
Yep.
want people to replace the fat with like white flour and sugar, which is exactly what they did with Snackwells. So, replace the fat with beans and whole grains and fruits and veggies. But yeah, yes, there is data to show that reducing the fat intake in the diet is linked to a lower risk, in this case, of actually dying from breast cancer, which is what I think most of us are worried about.
All right. Question from Nikki. Well, she wanted to know about whole grains as well, but she wanted to know specifically. I go down the bread aisle in the store and I see whole grain bread and I see multigrain bread. What is the difference? And do I still get the same benefits from multigrain bread as I do the whole grain bread?
So that could be an interesting little marketing piece there. As far as I know, that whole grain, they will need to tell you how much of it. If it's 100% whole grain or 100% whole wheat, that's what you're looking for. Otherwise, they can say contains whole grain, and who knows how much whole grain it contains. So, in terms of whole grain versus multigrain, you really just have to turn it over and look at the ingredient list. If it doesn't say 100% whole grain or 100% whole wheat on the front, you're going to turn it over, look at the ingredient list. A couple of things you can do. You can look at the fiber content. You should be getting, gosh, I'm not sure I can remember it off the top of my head, but at least 2 or 3 grams of fiber in a slice if it's truly whole grain. But the best way to look on the ingredient list. And if you see anything that says enriched wheat flour, enriched is just code for white flour. It's enriched because they took out all the good stuff, so they have to put it back through the enrichment process. So that's how you know if that's like the first or second ingredient in your bread, you're not getting that good whole grain goodness that you want. So you want to look for whole wheat flour, or maybe it's rye flour, or 100% whole rye flour. It will say that on the label. Just be on the lookout for that enriched flour or wheat flour. If it doesn't say whole wheat flour, it ain't whole.
And I would imagine for you as a dietitian, that's just good advice no matter what the food is. Just flip it over and take a look at that ingredients list.
Gosh, always look at the ingredient list. At the very least, I want people kind of looking at the nutrition label, but always, if you can, again, if you want to shop like a dietitian, and I know you do, you're going to turn it over because you want to know what you're getting. You wouldn't just walk out in your yard and like grab something and eat it, right? Like that would not go well. So you wouldn't want to do the same thing in the grocery store because, again, a lot of those products are not about making you healthy. They're about making that company have better profits. So, it's on us as consumers to take a minute and see what we're getting.
I think I saw some research recently on FOP labels. Are you familiar with FOP labels, front of package labels?
Yeah, I haven't read up on it in a while, but
so what they have found is that when a company decides to put that nutrition info on the front of the package, and it's not the full list, it's typically fat, calories, saturated fat, the big ones that people tend to look for. But by and large, when that information is front and center on the package, people tend to buy healthier items. And moreover, also what they found was that once one product does that, once one company does that with their products, their competitors do so as well because they have noticed a difference in sales. So
now who's got the info now, Chuck? Because I did not know that. Good. I mean, I'm not surprised by it, but I did not have that at the ready. So again, and it makes sense because, if you want to turn it over and look at the ingredient list, you got to get out your reading glasses. If you're a person of a certain age, I mean, it's not, you're like no. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
All right, last question here. Let's take it home. You, me, everybody are living in just the most stressful of stressful times right now. And what do people love to do when they're stressed out? Drink. Right.
Yep.
So we have so many questions about this. Some people have written in and said, hey, should I be drinking alcohol to lower my risk of cancer? Other people saying, well, I've heard that it actually increases my risk of cancer. So what does the science say here?
The science is crystal clear when it comes to alcohol, and that is that it increases risk for breast cancer, also for other cancers, by the way. But breast cancer in particular, it's really clear. And it's also really concerning because, pandemic this year, alcohol sales have gone up. And there was actually a study, it came out in September of this year, and it was looking at data from May and June of this year compared to the same time last year. And particularly among women, they found that any drinking among women is up 17% compared to the same time last year. And then frequency of heavy drinking among women is up 41%. And again, I understand why that can be the case. You're trying to homeschool kids and you're dealing with work and stress and everyone's all in one place. And it's stressful. You can't go to the grocery store without stress. I mean, you got to go the one-way aisles and it's a lot. So I understand why, but the data, again, they are super straightforward. So premenopausal women, each drink they have per day, it's a stair-step increase in risk. It increases the risk of developing breast cancer by 7%. So 2 glasses or 2 drinks a day is 14% risk increase, so forth. For postmenopausal, it's even worse news. I'm sorry, guys. Postmenopausal women, for every drink you consume per day, your risk of breast cancer increases by about 13%. So 2 drinks, 26%, and so forth. So you really do not want to be drinking alcohol. And there's some reasons for this. This isn't just like, oh, well, we don't know why. We know why. So oxidative stress and direct DNA damage can be caused by alcohol. One of the metabolic breakdown products of alcohol is acetaldehyde, and that in and of itself can also cause cancer. And we know that increasing the intake of alcohol raises estrogen levels, and your own estrogen can act like fuel on a fire, because most breast cancers are estrogen receptor positive, and we're talking the kind that turns on cell growth. So that's another issue. And then there are even some question that it might affect the microbiome in ways that might not be good for breast cancer risk. So more to come on that at some point later, but there are a number of reasons that alcohol is no good. And I will often get that, but what about red wine? Because I heard about that resveratrol and I feel like that's going to save me. And the answer is, will not save you. It might be slightly better than sitting down and taking a shot of whatever, but it's not enough to undo the negative effects of the alcohol itself. So again, it doesn't matter. It's a 12-ounce bottle of beer, it's a 5-ounce glass of wine, or a 1.5-ounce shot of liquor. They all have the same amount of alcohol, all have the same amount of risk. So I hate to be the one to say it. And also, one other not fun fact, is that drinking alcohol can increase breast density, which is another risk factor in terms of breast cancer. It can also make things a little harder to see on a mammogram. So many reasons that, you know what, just put that glass of wine aside, grab a mocktail instead of a cocktail, plus you'll sleep better, plus you'll cut some calories. So, hey, it works. Everybody wins, right?
Baby wants a bottle and so does mommy, but mommy needs to exercise self-control.
Yeah. Sorry,
All
guys.
What a great interview. You can catch the entire interview over on the Exam Room podcast, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Just head over to Apple Podcast or Spotify, Stitcher, wherever shows are available. Hit that subscribe button. And if you can, please leave a 5-star rating as well, because every new subscription and every 5-star rating genuinely helps to get this potentially life-saving information into the ears of those who need it the most. So all you need to do is head over to Apple Podcast or wherever you get your shows, hit subscribe and leave that 5-star rating. And I promise you this, just by doing that, you are helping to make the world a healthier place. Now, one quick follow-up to Lee and my discussion about green tea. This is relevant, and there has, in fact, been a lot of positive research, but there was also one study that I found, and Lee said, yeah, you know what? This is also relevant that you should mention on the show. And this particular study found that women who began to drink green tea before they turned 25 actually had a slightly increased risk for breast cancer, but only after menopause. But this was just one study. It was done in 2010, and even its own author concluded that more research was needed to confirm the findings. And Lee was wondering, well, maybe it wasn't the green tea, maybe this was lifestyle related, but definitely we need some more research on this. But nonetheless, she asked me to go ahead and give that study a mention. So there you go. And now you have all of the info. And of course, this interview, that full Q&A, just part one of our massive double episode of the Exam Room podcast that was released today. As a matter of fact, it dropped overnight. The other part of this is the award show part, right? Who doesn't like to get all gussied up and do awards? Dr. Christy Funk and I are handing out the awards for the best breast cancer fighting foods. So I want for you to download the show, get all dressed up, put on your best, and get ready for some awards, the likes of which you have never heard before. So we're handing out awards for the best fruit to fight breast cancer, the best vegetable to fight breast cancer, the best seeds, nuts, legumes, even the best spices that fight breast cancer. Everybody is going to get their own award there. And plus, with this being award show, you know we are handing out a Lifetime Achievement Award. And this time, that award is going to fiber. So just head over to Apple Podcast or Spotify, wherever you get your favorite shows. Hit that subscribe button for the Exam Room podcast by the Physicians Committee and leave that 5-star rating. All right. Today's show was part of our month-long Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign. And Dr. Funk and Lee, myself, everyone here at the Physicians Committee would love for you to join with us and pledge. Take that Let's Beat Breast Cancer pledge. Follow those 4 steps that you see on the screen right now that can reduce your risk for developing breast cancer. Head over to letsbeatbreastcancer.org. Join us in doing that. And when you do that, you will also be registered to win a great prize pack stuffed with all kinds of goodies in there that can get you going on your own health journey. And I also want to say along those lines, a big thank you to Kate Farms for supporting the Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign. We could not have done this and saved lives this year without their support. Coming up on the show tomorrow, more of your questions, but this time This time, my friends, we are casting a wide net and opening it up for all things related to vegan diets, health, and nutrition, and answering those questions, prescribing the answers from the doctor's mailbag. The one and only Dr. Neil Barnard will be back on the Exam Room Live, and he's going to be tag teaming with the one and only Dr. Jim Loomis. So, this is going to be part 5 of our vegan myths series. So, you got to let us know which myths you want busted, and they will do our best to get you some investigation and some answers on the show tomorrow. So, that is right back here at noon Eastern on Facebook and on YouTube. Set a reminder right now, and we will see you then. I want to say thank you again to dietitian extraordinaire, the fiber queen, Lee Crosby, for spending some time with us on the show today, and also to the crew behind the scenes that makes the magic happen. Thank you, guys. And to you who is watching right now on Facebook and on YouTube, you are my exam roomie. And you, I am eternally grateful that you are spending time with us here today. On behalf of everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. But until then, stay safe, take a stand, and keep it plant-based.